Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the TraxionGG podcast. I'm Tom, and joining me today is Justin Melillo. How are you?
Doing good, Tom. Thanks for having me.
That's no problem at all. Justin is, amongst other things, our resident NASCAR expert. You might be able to tell if you're watching the YouTube version based on his background of memorabilia there, perfectly on display. It's even got what would you call it? A hood? I would say bonnet. You'd say hood, right?
Yeah,
That's cool.
We've got a hood up on the wall, a NASCAR hood.
Nice. So that's how you know he's an expert. So today we're going to be talking about, pertinently enough, NASCAR games. Now, I'm well aware that a lot of you who are listening or watching are into NASCAR games or NASCAR the sport itself. I'm also aware that there's a lot of people who aren't. Let's be blunt. There seems to be a kind of a Marmite sport. That's a very English expression, unfortunately. You either love it or you hate it. But there is going to be a new NASCAR game, and some information has been revealed about that. So we're going to quickly run through what we know so far. And we believe that, if a game does what it says in the tin and is enjoyable, then it will get more people into NASCAR who've never played it before. Look at the Formula One and MotoGP games, which come out every year and attract perhaps a bigger audience just because they're enjoyable to play. If that's fair, Justin?
Yeah, definitely. I just picked up the Formula One 2020 a couple weeks ago, and I had already been kind of watching Formula One, and getting to get the feel of a Formula One car on my computer has definitely helped me in watching some of those broadcasts on television.
Yeah, now you know how difficult it is in real life.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So before we jump into the new stuff, though, I think it's appropriate to just see where we're at currently in the racing game and sim world with NASCAR, because it's not an exclusive license. There is only one game that's just dedicated to NASCAR, but NASCAR properties appear around in various different platforms of all sorts of varying different across varying different genres. So let's just run through what's available at the minute. So there's NASCAR Heat 5 and NASCAR Heat Mobile. They are official NASCAR games, which we've both played. And then there's also iRacing. So Justin, explain the iRacing NASCAR relationship, if that's okay.
Right. iRacing.com has a NASCAR section pretty much. I mean, iRacing covers not only NASCAR, but they cover many different motorsports and have many different tracks all across the world. But they do have that NASCAR licensing that you can go in and jump into a NASCAR stock car or a NASCAR truck or an Xfinity car, or even some of the older cars, and go around the officially NASCAR sanctioned tracks on the service. But it's not technically a NASCAR game. They just have NASCAR in it.
Right, yeah. So iRacing, it's only on PC for those who don't know. It's predominantly online racing focused, although there are some AI races you can do with other cars, though not NASCAR. If that's correct, Justin?
Yeah, the AI, they're still working on that over there, and it's a broad spectrum. It's not just NASCAR. They're also trying to get some of their open wheel and dirt and other types of vehicles and different tracks to be able to withhold their AI. But it's as bare bones as it gets.
Right. Okay. Yeah. And to be clear, to circle back to the NASCAR Heat games, there is like a full single player career. You could do time trials. You can race against single races against AI, and then you can play it online. And it's only got NASCAR content within it, so that's the differentiator between the two.
Strictly focused. It's just NASCAR.
Yeah, and then there's a couple of other games that have some NASCAR related content, which are even more broad than iRacing's focus, which would be Forza Motorsport 7, although that's quite a few years old at this point in time, and we don't know if it's going to be any NASCARs in the next Forza Motorsport, which has been teased. Rail Racing 3, which is EA's mobile racing game. And of course, as recently as this year, Rocket League, which I believe you tried, Justin.
Yeah, I was just playing that the other day with my brother. Going around, you can drive some of the different paint schemes or liveries that they've added into the game for the Chevrolets and Fords and Toyotas, and you go out there and you play soccer with cars. It's a fun time. It's not racing, it's soccer, but or football, whatever you want to call it.
You say soccer, I say football, but at the end of the day, it's Well, kind of neither, both because there's rockets and cars involved. So it is what it is. Rocket League.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but that's all official licensed content. So there's a NASCAR vehicle driver or livery of some description in all those platforms at the minute. There are some games that have like stock cars that are kind of generic, but they're not. No, they're not licensed. So, do you want to run us through a few of those, Justin?
Oh yeah, you can race in a stock car over on rFactor 2. They have a stock car type of vehicle that is available to run in there, and they kind of mirror some of the older generation NASCAR stock cars, the Chevrolet SS sort of, the Ford Fusion sort of, and those are in there. They've also got they've got one Ford Fusion from 2016 in Project Cars 3 that can be raced. Very random. Only the Ford Fusion. There's no Chevy, there's no Toyota, and it's not. You don't have any NASCAR branding at all on it. Only the Ford branding. All the stickers that are on the side say random Project Cars related things on it. One that I did put down here is Wreckfest, and that's not at all like there's no type of NASCAR race car at all in there, but it's very inspired. Some of the paint schemes and some of the body styles for like some of the older NASCAR, and there are of course there are mods that you can get and put NASCAR into Wreckfest, but that's all unofficial and completely off the books. And then the last one that I have is SRX the game, that one is probably the closest thing to NASCAR without actually being NASCAR. It's a new series that just popped up. I've written about it a couple times, and it's not a competitor. They don't want to call themselves a competitor to NASCAR, but they're everything that they've done is what maybe they wanted in NASCAR, with the way that the cars are and the way that the structure of the races are, and the types of tracks that they're racing at. They're racing at short tracks and dirt tracks in a car that's it's a stock car, and it's not very aero dependent, so you can go and you can race side by side for tens of laps against another driver without really any give up. There was a race the other night at Slinger, and I
watched a bit of that.
It was a great race. The guy who won, Marco Andretti, was side by side. Spoiler alert, by the way.
Come on, I'm not finished it yet.
I'm so sorry, Tom, but he was side by side with one of the other racers for about 25 laps, and it was just incredible racing. And then once he got past, Tony Stewart got there, but it's not NASCAR, but it's an offshoot of NASCAR.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. So, and you've also mentioned there that NASCAR is in the Gran Turismo Sport credits, but it's not in the game. And I'm wondering if that's like a legacy thing or a hint for the future of Gran Turismo 7. Who knows? What I do know is that in Gran Turismo 5, there was a whole Jeff Gordon thing where he taught you how to race NASCAR, and there were some cars in that game. But that's a story for another time. So that's where we stand at the minute, as of right now, July 2021, with NASCAR games or games that have NASCAR in there, before we jump into the new game information. And another thing we'd like to do before then is to just dissect the current NASCAR Heat game, which is Heat 5, which came out in July of 2020. So a year ago from now, effectively, or just over a year ago. And we'll go through what we liked and what we don't like. And then that's the context for what we have hopes and dreams for the new game, if that's fair. Interesting of note, though, obviously, this new game seems to be further, it's going to be more than a year since the last NASCAR game coming out, because we've already passed that date.
Right.
It's worth bearing in mind. All right. So NASCAR Heat 5, what does it do well, in your opinion?
I mean,
I'm going to hit you with that open-ended question there.
It does do a couple things well, and I have had times where I've enjoyed the little tiny little details in the game. One of the things that I really enjoy is that if you're going to go online, you can race in a 40 car field, which is the current limit of what a real NASCAR race is. So you can go out there.
Lobby.
Definitely. I mean, not many multiplayer online racing games can say that you can get more than 40 or more than
20.
16. so they put 40 people. You could put 40 people on one single server. The paint schemes and liveries, top notch. They are some of the best looking cars that are out there. You've got every single NASCAR Cup Series driver available to choose from. You've got most of the Xfinity and the Truck Series liveries and paint schemes to choose from. There are a couple that are missing here and there. Like there's no Jeb Burton in the Xfinity Series. He was a part-time driver, but he was,
Right.
he was competing for wins when he was there. And there are other part-time drivers that are included in there, like Ryan Vargas. You've got the dirt kind of section in there,
Yeah,
which
the
is
feeder series.
yeah, you've got that level of progression that it's fun to go through if it's done right. Uh, you've got Tony Stewart in the dirt side too, which is kind of funny because Tony Stewart has his own dirt games that are available. But
Yeah.
and
That's
the last
not awkward at all.
not awkward at all. But the last thing I think that it does well is that you can simulate a 2020 NASCAR race with the way that they have stage racing, with the way that they have the proper flags, caution flags, black flags. You can kind of get that simulation and feeling of a real race in NASCAR Heat, which you really can't get anywhere else.
What makes a fine game into a really, really good game is if it also appeases those who are into racing games and sims, for example. And in order to do that, has to drive well on the track. It can't just be the deliveries or number of players online, which leads us on to things that we don't think it does too well. I've played the last 3 games pretty extensively, and there's a fair few things that I think are, when you compare it to, we've already mentioned Formula One, for example, are sadly lacking. And the number one thing I feel is how the game, how the physics, the handling. I don't know if you've got any opinions on that yourself.
I agree. It's very subpar.
Yeah.
Is a word I would use. I've driven so many different NASCAR vehicles across so many different games over my entire life, pretty much. And
I mean, that's why you're on this podcast.
I guess that's why I'm here. It's difficult to pinpoint how like it's supposed to drive. I mean, we were talking about it before we started recording, but the Unity system, there's not really any other any other racing games that are using that. So it's kind of awkward in the way that the physics kind of work with this. It just doesn't. I've never driven a real race car. That first and foremost, I've never driven a real race car. I never will, but I've driven other simulators that claim to be better, and I can kind of agree with them because they feel better, and it doesn't feel like I'm going into a corner not knowing how I'm going to set it up. You kind of get with it, it's twitchy. You never really feel like you're in the corner too much, and you never really feel like you've got a complete control on what you've got. If you're using a wheel, that is on controller, even on a controller, it's somewhat difficult. But
well, I was going to say it's not much better with a controller.
I can't imagine it could be. Just going in there, you kind of get a death wobble sometimes, whether you're on controller or on wheel, and you might just spin going straight at times, which is
death wobble. That's a good expression. Yeah, I would. That's nicely summarized there, because it's, to me, it's somehow how the game is simulating the weight transfer of the vehicle, the pitch and the yaw, and it's either going around fairly, I would say, bland or inert. It's really overly friendly, if that makes sense. And then, in extremis, it's basically impossible to catch anything that's happening. You're either getting some sort of dull understeery feeling, or you've got in this sway and you're spinning around, and all right, the aim then is just try and get it straight as quick as you can in a way.
Never hit an apron, because if you hit an apron, there is no saving that. It's just impossible.
Game
once you go and get sideways, you're going for a loop, and you're just hoping not to get hit at that point.
But to be clear, I don't think this is fair. Tell me if I'm wrong. We're not saying that a NASCAR game like this has to be an out-and-out simulator, but it
Oh
just
no,
has to be closer to being authentic.
right.
It has to be a step above at the minute. And I understand that the majority of people will play this on a console with a controller, but it can still feel better than what it is at the minute, or provide the sensation of driving a bit more, I don't know, in an engaging or engrossing fashion.
Just because I'm turning the difficulty up doesn't mean that it should become a dumb driving experience.
Right.
Is one of my points. Is that I could go in there and I could turn all the settings to easy and go out there and pretty much let the car drive for me, and that's not really fun. I want to turn it down. I want to have a little bit of, difficulty to it. And with what I've noticed in driving this particular game is that by dropping or raising the difficulty in that sense, it's not really making it harder to drive. It's just making it dumber to drive in a sense.
Yes, that's a fair point. So I think that's fair to say that's the main one.
That definitely.
If a game drives well, you can sort of forgive some of the other shortcomings, if that's fair.
Sure.
Because that's the purpose of the game. But we'll rattle through a few others, because this podcast is not about Heat, but it's just giving the context, I suppose. Mm-hmm. For me, the career is fine, but it gets a bit repetitive and doesn't have enough incentive to continue. And then you had a point about like the paint schemes and liveries.
Paint booth is not my favorite. It's well, if I'm gonna be driving a custom car, like I've always enjoyed driving custom cars as opposed to somebody else's car out there, because I want to immerse myself in the game. So if what I'm given to use doesn't really work how I want to use it, I'll give an example. So in the SRX game that we talked about before, I was very happy that I was able to resize logos, numbers, and kind of move them around to make it look the way that I wanted to look. That's not an option in Heat 5. You get to pick your number, you get to pick your logo, and if they're too small, well, that's too bad, because it's just that's how it's going to look, and it doesn't look right. NASCAR numbers and logos, if you look at the real thing, they are huge. The numbers on the side of the door, they're huge. The logos on the hood are huge. They're big, and they're unapologetic about how big they are, and you don't really get that from the paint booth that's in NASCAR Heat 5. It's kind of like very minimalistic. If
it's a big unique thing, I think, in NASCAR to focus on the race number. Some people might say, Kyle Larson's won this weekend, but a lot of people might say, the 5 won. Have I got that right with the driver number combo there?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, Kyle Larson, number 5. Very proud.
But it's thanks. Yeah, no worries. Like, I know you're a big Allgaier fan, right? You've referred to that, but there are some NASCAR fans, am I correct in saying, that would be they follow the number as a big thing, or at least NASCAR fans seem to mention the race number a fair amount.
Oh, like, I mean, you talk about Earnhardt.
The 78.
Well, yeah, the 78 is now it's BJ McLeod. It's not the Motorsport Games car. It's the 78. You talk about historical numbers like the 3 Earnhardt. That's who the 3 is. You talk about the 43. That's Petty. 24 is Gordon. 48 is Johnson. There's just that history that's in NASCAR. The numbers are a big part of that, and they make it very noticeable on their paint schemes for sure. Like they stand out.
So not being able to do something like that is a bit of a shame. And there's a couple of other things which we'll just rattle through, I suppose. But yeah, like I say, we'll move on to the new stuff very imminently. The online, while it supports 40 players, it's just kind of like a list of lobbies. There's no like progression or ranking system really. It's just kind of a thing, which is great if you know people to have leagues with and whatever, but not so great if you just want to have, I don't know, some sort of impetus to play an online race, which I hate to say it, but Formula One again, or Gran Turismo Sport, or something like this. They've got the ranking systems in place, or iRacing. And then the challenges, which I I will openly admit I am not a NASCAR expert, even though I sort of follow the sport from afar. So I dip into the challenges and go, oh, okay, I've got to try and win this one, right? But I think it's fair to say that some of the accuracy is not the greatest.
Yeah, I mean the challenges, they're the ones that are supposed to be historically accurate, because there are definitely some that are like hypotheticals, like what ifs. Like they kind of give you that, like there's a Natalie Decker one, which there would never be a Natalie Decker one in real life because she hasn't done anything yet.
Right.
There was another one for I want to say Josh Bilicki maybe, who just he hasn't done anything yet, but it gives you these challenges to hypothetical challenges to go. But there are some where, like the very first one is my guy Justin Allgaier trying to go into the 2019 championship. He was one of the championship 4 drivers, and it's like, this is another chance, go out there and beat Tyler Reddick and go steal the championship. Well, I get on the track and I get up to the lead, and Tyler Reddick's not on track because Tyler Reddick isn't an option in NASCAR Heat 5 in the Xfinity Series. You go up there and the leader's not Tyler Reddick. So there was another one with Matt DiBenedetto and his Bristol upset where he almost won, and Denny Hamlin was the eventual winner, where it's like, go try to recreate this and give DiBenedetto a win. But then you get in and DiBenedetto's not that driver anymore of that car, but they put that car and you're driving that car and it's Christopher Bell now. So it's like, it kind of loses a little bit of that kind of immersion factor in that sense. And also the challenges really don't yield anything. There's no prizes at the end of it. You just do them.
Right. But so that's NASCAR Heat. It's fine. It's got good and bad, room for improvement. What we hope now is that the next game will take things on. So we're both going to look at our screens. So those watching on YouTube, apologies if we're looking down a lot, because the first, is it the first? Some more solid details have come out about the next NASCAR game. And the first images, it's the first sign of life for the game. Now, I've already mentioned earlier that this time last year, the Heat game was already out, which was that year's NASCAR game. So this seems to be further away. But this article is on IGN. But we've also got an article on the Traxion website, which sort of, look at this information that's on the IGN website. So we'll both read through this now, and we'll just pick out some interesting things. I would say that details are still kind of sparse, but right at the top, it will be released in 2021, which is a relief.
Yeah, I agree with that. And it continues the progression of getting a NASCAR game every year, which is something important to me, because there was a time at the end of the early 2000s where they didn't release a NASCAR game, and it was like the end of the world for me, because I've had every single NASCAR game since 1998. Every single console release from 98, 99 all the way through. So when they didn't have that game, it was like, is NASCAR not important enough to have a video game every year? Madden has a video game every year. MLB has a video game every year. NBA has a video game every year. Why is NASCAR getting shafted in this moment? But
so
we're keeping
basically we're saying, don't panic. There's not one out now, but this confirms that there is going to be something out this year for NASCAR fans like yourself, Justin. And the other thing that's important to mention is it references NASCAR 21 all the way through the article, but I'm convinced that when it first went live, it actually said that this is not a final name, or we don't know the name, or words to this effect, which has then seemingly been edited out. So I would say just don't take it as fact that is the title.
IGN wants you to believe.
Prove it.
Yeah, IGN wants you to believe that it's NASCAR 21, the way that they put it in their article. They kept referencing it as such.
Yeah, so if you say NASCAR 21, let's just take it with a slight pinch of salt, because I'm convinced the article said it might not be the final name. So there's also a couple of things here, and we'll go through the two main things, which we kind of already knew, but now we've seen it in action. So these screenshots look really detailed. And what they're saying is it's going to use the Unreal game engine for the graphics, not Unity, which is good if it all works. The screenshots there's one of Homestead Miami, which just kind of has like a pace car or a safety car or something there. No racing action. There's a close-up shot of the car on front part of the car on track with some detailed asphalt. There's one with like the sun setting behind the car, and then there's like a close-up of the car in its face, and then there's another one which is sort of like the pit paddock and some haulers or trucks there. Do you want to really quickly, Justin, just go through what tracks you spotted or details that jumped out to you from these screenshots? And
Sure.
for audio listeners, I do apologize, but Traxion.gg, visit the website and you'll be able to see the screenshots that we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. So I'll start with the one that's at Homestead Miami. I really wanted to believe that was a race car that was on pit road, but it is a safety car. It's the Ford.
It was like a Mustang. Yeah.
Right. So but looking at this screenshot, and I wanted to say it was at sunset, but somebody pointed out to me on Twitter that the sun is setting in the opposite direction. So this is actually like sunrise. The way that the sun is pointed, it's very early in the morning. The shadows are very long. The stands are packed though. You've got each individual blade of grass. Yeah, it's post-COVID. Thank goodness it's post-COVID. You got every individual blade of grass, every leaf.
The grass does look good.
Definitely. It's a really good looking picture right here. You've got every detail of the grandstand itself, where even the suites and the press area on the outside of the track just looks exactly how it would if I were at the real track, which I've been at the real track. The infield as well looks exactly as it was. So very much a lot of detail already in just this one shot. Even though it's all zoomed out, you get that feeling that you're standing at the grass at Homestead Miami in the early morning. There's another one where there's the burger truck. That one, 99% I'm saying that this is Pocono Raceway, just the way that the fence is modeled. and the way that the walls are and the way that the campers are on the outside. I really want to believe that this one and the big screen on the outside as well. I want to say that this is Pocono Raceway. I've been there so many times. This looks like it would be late in the day at Pocono Raceway.
Yep.
Just because they're historically late races that get weather delays all the time. And they start at 3 p.m. for some reason. A lot of detail with the lighting coming through, the window netting.
That's the key thing for me, I think.
Yeah, it's a very pretty.
Very different.
It's dark, but it's pretty. And
yeah, it is quite dark, isn't it?
Yeah.
Pocono Raceway. Oh, we'll have to see when the game comes out if you're correct there, Justin. I'm going to hold
keeping my fingers crossed. Well, we know it's going to be in the game. I'm really thinking that it's going to be that.
I'm going to find that fence and that TV screen and see if it was,
and that burger truck. Don't forget the burger truck.
Yeah.
We've got another screenshot here where it's kind of looking down on the car from the side towards the pavement, and the pavement itself very, very detailed.
It is.
I didn't put it in my traction recap, but I want to say that this track, the way that the grooves are and the way that it's grinded and so smooth, I want to say that this is maybe Indianapolis.
It could be. The little sort of, I don't suppose the corrugations, but lines in the asphalt there, I was thinking.
Because they do diamond grinding there all the time just to make sure that track is like as smooth as possible.
Right.
So I want to say that this is it. One of the other things that I took away with the car itself is that things like the hood pins and the windshield tear-offs, those are 3D modeled here. They're not just like flat layers.
Yes, big thing. And there's like there's netting in the side window, and
you could see that
like
detail.
Some sort of air vent coming out. You know, it's actually modeled, detailed. It's not just like an image slapped on the side there, which is a huge step forward, I think.
These last two shots are both at Daytona, and the way that I can tell that the one with the haulers is at Daytona is because at the very bottom of the screen there's the Uno infield fan area. You can kind of see the top of that Uno.
You can see the top of Uno, yeah.
Right. So this has got to be Daytona. They're looking at a pylon. There's a Sunoco. There's this is probably in the infield, over by either where the drivers would camp out or over by the haulers. Either one, you could see kind of the reflections and the lighting on different like types of the stuff. You could see the shiny parts got that red glow, but then the matte part kind of reflects light differently. So there's different levels of that, and I get really excited on that. And then the final picture is at Daytona. Yeah. And this is just a shot of the 78 car coming across the line at the Daytona 500, which it's got next year's logo on there. It's like Homestead Miami, it's got everything detailed. It's got the grandstands and then the suites and the press area all perfectly done. You got the light stands exactly how they are, the flag stand as it is. Again, you can see the lighting on the car is different in places where the metallic glossy kind of shines differently than the matte type of, you know, front type of area. So it's just overall super detail in just these 5 screenshots alone. Really gives us an idea of what to expect maybe for the upcoming game.
And it looks like a giant leap forward on these images, but there are 2 things that I'm going to temper your excitement with slightly.
Sure.
And they are, one, not seeing this game moving yet. So
no.
But it does seem like the environments are more detailed, which is the key takeaway from these images. Like you said, the burger stand or the what would you call it? The big tower with the
pylon
on. The pylon, yeah. That seems to be and the fans nearby, brilliant. But we'll have to see how that works in action. But the main thing is there's more detail to the environment. Second thing is the key thing is missing from this information. We don't know what devices this is coming out on, and also therefore we don't know what devices these screenshots were taken on.
Right.
So what I would say is, I don't know, but it usually with a game like this, you'd probably be using like some high spec PC to take images like this to show it in its best light.
I would assume.
But you know, that's a pure assumption. We don't know because we don't know what devices it's coming from. So while it looks hugely promising from these images, I'm awaiting with bated breath and not get too carried away because we don't know what devices it's coming on, what the minimum specs are, what the recommended specs are on the PC, what is it coming to next gen or old gen, and how does it look on either or all? All this stuff is to be answered. But what we do know is that our main complaint about Heat should be rectified in some way. Again, until we try it, we don't know. But as it's mentioned already, it's going to use the rFactor 2 PC sim game for the handling physics, which should be a big step forward, shouldn't it?
I would definitely hope so. And like I mentioned before, the rFactor 2 does have a stock car already in it. It's not a NASCAR stock car, but it does have
gives you an idea though.
It gives you somewhat of an idea of what to expect for that. And also one other thing that's really cool is everybody talks about iRacing and how drivers use it for prep for tracks and whatnot, but the teams actually have a version of rFactor that they use that they plug their own data into, and those are the simulators that they use on the team level to prepare for races before they head to the track. So rFactor's already got that NASCAR link that possibly could now be used with this.
Yeah, exactly. Now, what I would say there is this game has to work very well on a console with a controller. As well as a wheel, whereas rFactor 2, well, it does work with a controller, but it's definitely best with a wheel or a cockpit and a rig. So I'm wondering if there are, obviously, it's not just a straight copy across. I think it's reasonable to expect that. But I think what it's reasonable to expect would be a step forward from Heat.
I would hope so.
Something that's significantly more authentic than that. And maybe even other yearly racing games, certainly more on the sim level, but it has to be. Well, I think in some previous interviews I've seen, it has to be based upon having good assists to help players, as opposed to dumbing down the handling.
Right.
So that's key. I just want to pick up on really quickly because we're going long here, but we need to mention a couple of things mentioned in this interview. Motorsport Games, George Holmquist, he says, and I quote, "The game that brings the graphics and the gameplay into more of a AAA style game, which can only be good. So that if that holds true, it suggests to me high levels of production value.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second thing is that based upon fan feedback, the paint booth, which we've already covered, should be a significant step forward. He says the paint booth is one people have been asking for directly in the community, and it's something we're delivering on this first iteration of the new franchise. So happy days, Justin. We don't know what you can do on it, but it sounds like a step forward.
Yeah, we haven't seen it yet, but it sounds really, really promising. I really hope this next NASCAR game is everything that we've hoped for. I know it's not going to be everything that we hope for, because they can't just like flip it over and give us the greatest thing ever. There's going to be time that it's going to take to put in all that work. I mean, this is a great start from what it sounds like, and I can only hope that it gets better as we continue through 2022, 2023, and so on and so forth. It's incredible that they're pretty much starting from scratch with this, and not really taking what they already had with Heat and just trying to make that better. They're kind of throwing that out and saying, hey, we're trying something new here, and hopefully that means better days for all NASCAR fans in years to come.
Sorry, that's quite rude. Yeah, I agree with that, Justin. Well said. And I would say that normally with a yearly sports game, it's built upon for many, many years. Okay, it's very, very different now, but I'm going back to the Formula One example now. Formula One 2021 is still using an iteration or a heavily modified version of what was initially made back in 2010. So it's been 11 years of constant evolution and development, whereas here, this is new game engine, so clean
year one,
clean state. Yeah. And George's comment there where he says in this first iteration of the new franchise, it's not specifically saying it, but my interpretation of that, or reading between the lines, is that, you know, this is not just this game. We're gonna keep going, and we're gonna listen to the community by keeping on going. So let's see. There's still a lot to know. We don't know when it's going to come out. We don't know what platforms it's going to be on, and we don't know what it looks like in action. So there's a lot to get through before the end of 2021, whenever it comes out.
Definitely.
But certainly our sentiment is positive at the minute, if that's fair to say.
Yes, definitely.
But we'll have to try it. That's the main thing, isn't it? And so stay tuned to Traxion. We'll keep you updated with everything. Well, I was nearly said NASCAR 21 there, but again, we don't really know. So the next NASCAR game, stay tuned to Traxion, and we'll, as soon as there is anything to talk about, we'll certainly let you know. But before we go, Justin, I would like to know, what's your favorite NASCAR game of all time? Because you've already said that you've bought every single one. And what's good about it that maybe this NASCAR game has to try and live up to?
If I had to say my favorite game of all time, like on the simulator side, is NASCAR Racing 2003 by Papyrus. It's got great drivability. It's got realistic racing. It's got realistic crashing. It's got great online capabilities. It's really good online. NASCAR Thunder series, the 2003 and 2004 games specifically by EA Sports, those were really fun to play. They had a great like career/owner mode where it really immersed you at the time. The lightning challenges were really memorable. I will never forget, just because the memes are still out there of Mike Skinner pointing behind him. How would you like to see this happening right in front of you? You know, and you get prizes for doing those Thunder challenges. And I do want to give an honorable mention to Dirt to Daytona. That game as well. It really started that concept of starting from the bottom of the ladder and moving yourself up to the top ranks. There were realistic expenses to keep track of. It was a fun layout. You had the scrappy owner/driver and trying to move through the ranks of dirt racing, modified trucks, and NASCAR Cup Series. And it was a neat concept, and it worked. I probably had my nostalgia glasses on, but I really did enjoy the concept of what was in those. So definitely. If anything in any of those games happens to bring its way in a proper way to the next NASCAR game, it's going to be a good time.
So that just shows how much of a NASCAR gaming fan you are, because I asked for one and you gave me three. But it's fine.
I gave you four because
because one was 03/4, right?
Yeah.
That's fine. You see, I don't think many other gaming podcasts would have such a NASCAR expert on board. So I really thank you for your time, Justin. It's been a pleasure. As I said already, keep it pinned on TraxionGG, the website. Visit every day for the latest racing game, sim news, not just NASCAR, all sorts of stuff. And when there is something, we'll be back, I'm sure. There's also the TraxionGG YouTube channel. Give it a like and a subscribe. If you follow or subscribe on a podcast service, it helps us out because it gives us more exposure and we can make more of these podcasts for your enjoyment. And lastly, follow us on social media at TraxionGG. Okay, thanks, Justin. That's it for now.
Thanks for having me, Tom. It was a pleasure.
No problem. See you all next week.